Chosen one, why are you still awake at 3 a.m., staring at your phone, searching for something you can't even name? Why does your chest tighten every time someone asks if you're okay, when deep down you know you're carrying a weight that has no earthly explanation? Why do you feel like you've been waiting your entire life for someone to finally tell you the truth about who you really are? Be prepared. If this message found you tonight, it is not chance, it's confirmation. You have been tested. And you, yes, you sitting there in that chair, in that darkness, in that sacred loneliness, you passed. Others scrolled past this message. Others felt the pull but clicked away, too afraid of what they might discover about themselves. But you remained. Why? Because your spirit already recognizes the frequency of what I'm about to reveal. Your soul is trembling right now because it remembers something your mind forgot long ago. For 70, 80, maybe 90 years, you've carried this knowing, this ache, this sense that everything you've endured, every rejection that cut like a blade, every door that slammed in your face, every night you cried yourself to sleep, wondering if God had forgotten your address. It all meant something. It was all preparation. The test wasn't the pain, beloved. The test was whether you'd still be standing when the revelation came. What I'm about to tell you in the next hour will shatter every lie you've believed about your struggles, your age, your worth, your purpose. Every closed door was protection. Every rejection was redirection. Every tear was liquid prophecy being poured out for this exact moment when heaven would finally say, Now you're ready to know everything. Before we journey deeper into this sacred mystery together, I want to pause and acknowledge every single one of you who has supported this message through super thanks. Your generosity means more than you realize. You're not just giving. You're sowing seeds of hope into hearts that feel forgotten. Whether you give or not, I'm deeply grateful for your presence here. Your time, your attention, your willingness to stay when others walked away, it all matters. And if this message is already stirring something deep in your spirit, go ahead and let that seed find soil. If your spirit is already confirming what I'm speaking, if something ancient is awakening in your chest right now, I need you to do something. Type in the comments, I passed the test. Don't just think it, declare it. Say it out loud where you're sitting. Let heaven hear your voice claim what it has always known about you. Because what comes next will explain everything, every scar, every struggle, every silent victory that nobody witnessed. The secret I'm about to reveal has been hidden since the foundation of the world, and it's time you finally heard your name called from the throne room of eternity. You didn't find this message. This message found you. Now let me tell you why. Why do your bones ache at 3 a.m. with a pain that has no medical name? Why do you wake up feeling like you've been wrestling angels in your sleep, exhausted from battles nobody else can see? Why have the last few months felt like you're being stripped down to nothing, layer by layer, until you wondered if there would be anything left of who you used to be? Listen to me, dear chosen one. What you've been calling your breakdown was actually your breakthrough being forged in the furnace of the Almighty. That restless fire you felt burning in your chest, that wasn't anxiety, that wasn't aging, that wasn't your mind playing tricks on you. That was the fire of Aries, sent by heaven itself to test what you're truly made of. And while you thought you were falling apart, God was watching to see if you would stand. You remember those nights, don't you? Those 2 a.m. moments when you sat on the edge of your bed, staring into the darkness, feeling like your prayers were bouncing off the ceiling and echoing back in mockery. Your body ached in places that had no names. Your heart carried burdens that belonged to grandchildren who never called, children who forgot your birthday, dreams that died before they ever saw daylight. You whispered into that suffocating silence, God, have you forgotten me? Have I become invisible in my golden years? Am I just taking up space until you call me home? But what you thought was abandonment was actually examination. What felt like punishment was preparation. What looked like the end was the beginning of everything you were created for. The fire of Aries doesn't come to comfort, it comes to reveal. Just like the refiner's fire in Malachi 3:3, when the silversmith heats the precious metal until it melts, he's not destroying it, he's purifying it. He's watching, waiting for the moment when he can see his own reflection perfectly in the molten silver. That's when he knows it's ready. God has been heating your life, dear one. Every betrayal that cut deeper than you thought possible. Every financial pressure that kept you awake calculating pennies. Every health scare that made you question if your body was finally giving up on you. Every lonely evening when the house felt too quiet and the memories felt too loud. But here's the revelation that will shatter everything you thought you knew about your suffering. Fire doesn't destroy the diamond, it reveals it. Think about the 3 Hebrew boys in Daniel chapter 3. King Nebuchadnezzar heated that furnace 7 times hotter than normal. 7 times. The soldiers who threw them in died from the heat before they could step back. But Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego walked around in that fire like it was a spring morning in Central Park. And when the king looked into the furnace, he saw something that stopped his heart. I see 4 men walking around in the fire, unbound and unharmed, and the 4th looks like a son of the gods. You've been in your furnace, haven't you? 7 times hotter than anything you've ever experienced. The heat's so intense you thought it would consume you. But look around, you're still walking. You're still breathing. You're still believing. And if you could see what heaven sees, you'd realize you haven't been walking alone. The 4th man in the fire has been with you every sleepless night, every tearful prayer, every moment you wanted to quit but couldn't. That wasn't suffering in solitude, that was sanctification in the secret place. Every attack on your health was actually strengthening your faith. Every financial pressure was teaching you that your provision comes from heaven's economy, not Wall Street's. Every relationship that crumbled was making room for divine connections that were waiting for you to be ready to receive them. But here's what breaks my heart and what should revolutionize your perspective. You've been apologizing for surviving what should have killed you. You've been ashamed of scars that are actually trophies. You've been hiding strength that heaven invested decades into building. The pain that almost broke you became the signature on your covenant with destiny. Let me ask you something that's going to cut straight to your soul. How many fires have you walked through that should have turned you to ash? How many betrayals have you survived that would have destroyed weaker spirits? How many nights have you cried yourself to sleep and still woken up the next morning, choosing faith over fear? That's not human endurance, beloved. That's divine evidence. Evidence that you carry something too precious for hell to destroy, too powerful for circumstances to contain, too sacred for this world to fully understand. Isaiah 43:2 declares with thunderous authority, "When you pass through the waters, I will be with you. And when you pass through the rivers, they will not sweep over you. When you walk through the fire, you will not be burned. The flames will not set you ablaze." Pass through. Not around. Not over. Through. Because the fire wasn't your punishment, it was your promotion ceremony. Every flame that licked at your faith only proved it was fireproof. Every wave that tried to drown your hope only demonstrated it was unsinkable. You didn't just survive the test of fire, you graduated from it. With honors, with scars that tell stories of victory, with wisdom that can only be earned in the furnace, with a faith so refined that it shines like gold in sunlight. The enemy thought he was destroying you. God was actually revealing you. What looked like your ending was your beginning. What felt like defeat was preparation for dominion. And now, as you sit here listening to these words, something ancient is stirring in your chest. Something that's been dormant is awakening. Something that's been hidden is being unveiled. Can you feel it? That's not nostalgia for younger days, that's prophecy for greater days. If you survived the fire, if you walked through flames that should have consumed you, and came out not smelling like smoke but shining like stars, whisper Amen in the comments. Don't just think it, declare it. Let heaven hear your testimony. Claim your victory. Because what I'm about to reveal next will show you exactly what that fire was preparing you for. And beloved, It's bigger than anything you've dared to dream. Listen to me, chosen one. What you've just walked through wasn't just another season of struggle. It wasn't just another test to endure and forget. The fire of Aries that nearly consumed you these past months, every sleepless night, every financial pressure, every relationship that crumbled, every door that slammed shut when you thought breakthrough was finally coming, that wasn't punishment, that was purification. You've been asking God, why me? Why now? Why, at my age, do I have to face the hardest battles of my life? But what if I told you that every flame you walked through was strategically placed to burn away everything that was blocking your true blueprint from emerging? Think about Moses. 80 years old when God called him to the burning bush. 80. The world would have put him in a retirement home, but God said, now you're ready. Now the dross has been burned away. Now I can show you who you really are. Exodus 3:10 records God's words. So now, go. I am sending you to Pharaoh to bring my people out of Egypt. The shift into Taurus changes everything. Where Aries was fire and chaos, Taurus is earth and foundation. Where Aries stripped you bare, Taurus clothes you with clarity. Where Aries made you question everything, Taurus gives you answers that shake you to your core. Picture this. You've been walking through fog so thick you couldn't see 3 feet in front of you. Every step was uncertain. Every decision felt like a gamble. You've been stumbling through choices that made no sense, relationships that drained you, opportunities that led nowhere. But suddenly the fog lifts, and what you see takes your breath away. It's a map. Not just any map, but the map. The blueprint of your life spread out before you like a masterpiece finally revealed. Every detour you took makes sense now. Every wrong turn was actually a right turn leading you to this exact moment. Every dead end was protecting you from paths that would have destroyed your destiny. Dear friend, your blueprint was never lost. It was hidden. Hidden until you developed the spiritual eyes to see it, the emotional strength to handle it, the character to walk it without being corrupted by it. But here's what's going to shock you about this blueprint. All those choices that used to paralyze you with anxiety, should I stay or go? Should I speak up or stay silent? Should I trust this person or walk away? They're not confusing anymore. They're pointing in one direction, one clear, undeniable direction that makes your spirit leap with recognition. Jeremiah 29:11 suddenly becomes more than just a pretty verse on a wall. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, to give you hope and a future. Those plans aren't vague anymore. They're specific. They're detailed. They're unfolding before your eyes like a scroll being opened by divine hands. You know what the most dangerous moment is for a chosen one? It's not during the fire. It's after the fire, when the blueprint is revealed and you have to decide, will I trust what I'm seeing or will I go back to the familiar fog? This is why so many people stay stuck. They get a glimpse of their true path and it terrifies them. Because walking your blueprint requires leaving behind everything that felt safe, even if it was slowly killing you. It requires trusting God's GPS when it tells you to take routes you've never traveled. But you're different. You've been tested in the fire and you're still standing. You've proved you can handle the heat. Now the question is, can you handle the clarity? Your blueprint isn't just personal, beloved. It's generational. Every choice you make now doesn't just affect you. It rewrites the story for your children, your grandchildren, people you'll never meet, but whose lives will be forever changed because you finally said yes to who God created you to be. Think about Sarah at 90 years old, holding Isaac and realizing that every year of barrenness was preparing her womb for a miracle that would birth nations. Think about David, finally ascending to the throne after years of hiding in caves, understanding that every cave was a classroom preparing him to rule with wisdom. Your Taurus season is your Sarah moment, your David moment. The moment when everything that made no sense suddenly makes perfect sense. But here's the question that will determine whether you step into your blueprint or step back into the fog. Are you ready to trust what you're seeing? Are you ready to follow where it leads, even if it looks nothing like the life you thought you were supposed to live? Because I'm telling you right now, this blueprint won't wait forever. Clarity has an expiration date. Windows of divine opportunity don't stay open just because we're not ready to walk through them. God is saying to you what he said to Joshua in Joshua 1-9. Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged. For the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go. Wherever this blueprint leads you, and it may lead you to places that seem impossible at your age, with your background, with your limitations, God will be with you. Not behind you, not above you, but with you, step by step, mile by mile. If you can see it, if the fog is lifting and the map is becoming clear, I need you to declare it right now. Write in the comments, I see the blueprint. Don't hesitate, don't analyze, just declare it. Because clarity is not coming someday when you feel more prepared. Clarity is coming now, and it's demanding a response. The blueprint is awake. The question is, are you? Listen to me, dear one. Right now, as you're sitting there, I know what you're thinking. I know, because I've heard this whisper from thousands of souls just like you. You're looking at yourself and seeing only what's broken, only what's missing, only what time has taken away. You lie awake at night, don't you? Your mind racing through conversations from 30 years ago, analyzing every word, every pause, every look. You've been told your whole life that you think too much, that you need to quiet that restless mind of yours. Your own family has rolled their eyes and said, there you go again, overthinking everything. But what if I told you that the very thing they've been trying to silence is the very thing heaven has been trying to amplify? You see, beloved, the enemy's greatest trick isn't making you sin, it's making you ashamed of your gifts. Making you believe that what makes you different makes you defective. Making you apologize for the very qualities that qualified you for this calling. Think about the prophet Jeremiah. When God called him, what was his first response? I am only a child. I do not know how to speak. Jeremiah 1-6. He saw his youth as disqualification, but God saw it as preparation. Do not say, I am only a child, the Lord replied. You must go to everyone I send you to and say whatever I command you. Your overthinking isn't a flaw, chosen one. It's razor-sharp discernment wrapped in flesh and blood. While others skim the surface, you dive deep. While they accept the obvious, you see the layers underneath. That mind that won't shut off at 2 a.m., it's been downloading wisdom from heaven while the rest of the world sleeps. Every scenario you've played out, every what-if you've considered, every angle you've examined, it wasn't paranoia, it was prophecy. You connect dots others can't even see. You notice patterns that escape everyone around you. You sense danger before it arrives and opportunity before it knocks. That's not mental illness. That's spiritual intelligence. And that social awkwardness you've carried like a scarlet letter, that feeling of never quite fitting in, never knowing what to say, never feeling comfortable in crowds, you thought it was holding you back, didn't you? But Ecclesiastes 3-7 tells us there is a time to be silent and a time to speak. Your awkwardness isn't social failure, it's divine filtering. God gave you a built-in detector for shallow people and surface relationships. Your discomfort in meaningless conversations isn't weakness, it's your soul rejecting counterfeit connection. You don't small talk because you were built for soul talk. You don't do surface because you were designed for depth. That awkward silence you create, it forces people to show you who they really are. The ones who stay, who lean in, who meet you in that deeper place, those are your tribe. The ones who flee from your intensity were never meant to walk with you anyway. Your social awkwardness is actually social accuracy. But here's the one that's going to shock you most. That aging body you've been apologizing for. Those slower steps, that need for more rest. The way young people's eyes seem to look right through you as if you're invisible. You think you're disappearing, don't you? Let me tell you what's really happening. 1 Timothy 5-1 says, Do not rebuke an older man harshly, but exhort him as if he were your father. The Bible doesn't see your age as decline, it sees it as divine promotion. Every gray hair is a crown of glory, earned through battles fought and wisdom gained. But here's the supernatural truth they don't want you to know. Your physical slowing down is creating space for your spiritual speeding up. While your body conserves energy, your spirit accumulates power. While your social circle shrinks, your spiritual authority expands. That invisibility you feel, it's not rejection, it's camouflage. God is hiding you in plain sight, protecting you from those who would drain your anointing, positioning you among those who need your wisdom most. You think you're becoming irrelevant, but you're actually becoming essential. This generation is drowning in noise, and you carry the frequency of peace. They're addicted to speed, and you embody the power of stillness. They worship youth, but you demonstrate the beauty of endurance. Your wrinkles aren't damage, they're maps of faithfulness. Your slower pace isn't limitation, it's the measured walk of someone who knows where they're going. Your need for solitude isn't loneliness, it's communion with the eternal. What if the very thing you've been trying to erase is the very thing heaven needs from you? What if your supposed weakness was never weakness at all, but a weapon waiting for the right moment to be wielded? Job 12:12 declares, "Is not wisdom found among the aged? Does not long life bring understanding?" Your age isn't your disqualification, it's your credential. Your overthinking isn't your curse, it's your calling. Your social awkwardness isn't your shame, it's your strength. Every single thing the world has told you to hide, heaven is telling you to wield. Every characteristic you've apologized for, God is saying, finally, now you're ready to use what I gave you. Your shadow is no longer your shame, it is your sword. Right now, something is shifting in your chest. I can feel it through the screen. That's recognition stirring. That's your spirit remembering what your mind forgot. You weren't meant to fit in because you were meant to stand out. You weren't designed for shallow because you were created for sacred. If you can feel this truth settling into your bones, if you can sense that divine reversal happening right now in your spirit, I need you to do something bold. Say it out loud where you're sitting. My weakness is my weapon. Don't whisper it, declare it. Let the angels hear you claim what they've always known about you. But understanding your weapons is only half the battle. Because now that you know what you carry, you need to know where the battlefield island. And beloved, that battlefield is closer than you think. Listen to me carefully, chosen one. What I'm about to reveal will shatter every story you've told yourself about failure, rejection, and the doors that slammed in your face when you needed them most. You remember that job you didn't get 15 years ago, don't you? The one you prayed about for months. The one where you polished your resume until it gleamed, rehearsed your answers until they flowed like water, and walked into that interview absolutely knowing this was God's provision. Then silence. Then rejection. Then that crushing weight in your chest as you wondered if you'd done something wrong, if your faith wasn't strong enough, if God had simply forgotten about you. What if I told you that rejection saved your life? What if that company went bankrupt 2 years later? What if that boss turned out to be a predator? What if staying in that familiar place would have kept you small when God was preparing to make you mighty? Dear one, you've been reading the story backwards. What looked like abandonment was actually intervention. What felt like punishment was actually protection. What seemed like God saying no was actually God screaming, "Not yet, I have something better." Think about that relationship that fell apart just when you thought you'd found your person. The one where you gave everything, loved with your whole heart, planned a future that made perfect sense. Then betrayal, then abandonment, then nights so dark you weren't sure you'd see morning. But here's what you couldn't see from inside that pain. That person would have destroyed the very thing God was building in you. They would have dimmed your light right when heaven needed it to shine brightest. Jeremiah 29:11 declares, For I know the plans I have for you, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, to give you hope and a future. But notice it doesn't say the plans you have for yourself. It says the plans He has for you. And sometimes those plans require rescuing you from your own limited vision. The universe isn't just watching your life unfold. It's in the driver's seat, making split-second decisions to save you from disasters you can't even see coming. Remember that house you wanted to buy, but the financing fell through at the last minute? What if the foundation was cracked? What if that neighborhood was about to turn dangerous? What if God was steering you away from a money pit that would have consumed your retirement? You called it bad luck. Heaven called it divine intervention. Think about Moses, chosen one. He had a plan: live as Egyptian royalty, enjoy palace life, avoid the suffering of his people. But God had other plans. Exodus chapter 2 tells us Moses killed an Egyptian taskmaster and had to flee for his life, from prince to refugee overnight. 40 years in the wilderness, tending sheep, wondering if his life was over before it began. But those 40 years weren't punishment. They were preparation. God was stripping away the pride, the anger, the need to fix everything with human strength. When Moses finally stood before Pharaoh, he wasn't speaking as an entitled prince. He was speaking as a man who had learned to hear God's voice in the silence of the desert. Your wilderness wasn't wasted time. It was graduate school for your calling. But here's where it gets shocking, where it cuts right to the bone of your experience. How many times have you been absolutely certain about a path, only to watch it dissolve before your eyes? How many times have you felt God's leading, stepped out in faith, and walked straight into a brick wall? The marriage that ended in divorce, the business that failed despite your prayers, the children who stopped calling, the church that rejected your service, the dreams that died slow, painful deaths while you watched helplessly. You thought God was sleeping, but God was steering. Isaiah 55:8-9 reminds us, "My thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways, declares the Lord. As the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts." Sometimes rejection is not God closing a door. It's God dragging you through the right one before you can get comfortable in the wrong place. Look at David. 1 Samuel tells us he was anointed king as a teenager, then spent the next 15 years running for his life, hiding in caves, eating scraps, wondering if Samuel had made a mistake. Every door to the throne seemed barred. Every attempt at normal life was shattered. But those cave years weren't delaying his destiny, they were forging it. When David finally became king, he didn't rule from privilege. He ruled from proven character. Your character was forged in the caves too, wasn't it? In those seasons when nothing made sense, when every plan crumbled, when you had nothing left but God's faithfulness to cling to. And here's the twist that will leave you breathless. The very thing that broke your heart is about to become your greatest testimony. The door that slammed shut is about to become the platform from which you help others find their way. The rejection that nearly destroyed you is about to become the qualification that heaven uses to promote you. Romans 8:28 doesn't say all things are good. It says all things work together for good, even the betrayals, even the failures, even the nights you cried yourself to sleep wondering if you'd ever matter to anyone. Every scar was strategically placed. Every detour was divinely orchestrated. Every closed door was cosmic course correction. You weren't being rejected, chosen one. You were being redirected towards something so much greater that your human mind couldn't have conceived it. Your limited vision couldn't have imagined it. Your finite heart couldn't have contained it. The storm that seemed to destroy everything was actually the wind that blew you toward your destiny. And now, finally, you're beginning to see the pattern. The rescue disguised as rejection. The protection hidden in the pain. If this is your story, if you've lived through rejections that nearly broke you only to discover they were really rescues, share your testimony below. Someone scrolling through these comments is sitting in their own cave right now, wondering if God has forgotten them. They need to hear that the detour isn't defeat. It's divine strategy. But what happens when you finally understand that every closed door was actually an open heaven? When you realize that all along, you weren't being punished, you were being positioned. Something has shifted inside you, and you can feel it in your bones. It's not just confidence. Confidence can be shaken. It's not just wisdom. Wisdom can be questioned. What you carry now is deeper, more ancient, more unshakable than anything you've ever experienced. You carry authority. Look at yourself right now. Really look. See those hands that have weathered storms, buried loved ones, and still find strength to fold in prayer. Those aren't just hands anymore. They're instruments of heaven's will. See those eyes that have witnessed decades of God's faithfulness through impossible circumstances. They don't just observe anymore. They see with prophetic clarity. When you walk into a room now, people sense something they can't name. Conversations pause. Heads turn. The atmosphere shifts. And you haven't even spoken a word yet. This is what happens when someone passes the test that breaks most people. This is what occurs when heaven finally says, "You're ready to carry what I've been building in you." But let me ask you something that cuts straight to your heart. How many years did you spend apologizing for taking up space? How many decades did you shrink back, water down your truth, stay quiet when your spirit was screaming to speak? How many times did you second-guess the very instincts that were trying to save not just you, but everyone around you? Those days are over. The test stripped that false humility away like dead skin. What remains isn't arrogance, it's authenticity. It isn't pride, it's presence. It isn't ego, it's eternity flowing through earthly form. Think about Moses after he came down from Mount Sinai. Exodus 34-30 tells us his face was so radiant from being in God's presence that the Israelites couldn't even look at him. But here's what most people miss. Moses didn't know his face was glowing. He wasn't trying to impress anyone. He wasn't performing authority. He was simply carrying what heaven had deposited in him. That's you now, chosen one. You're radiating something you don't even recognize yet. A mountain doesn't announce itself. It doesn't apologize for its height. It doesn't ask permission to stand. It simply exists in such solid, unshakable presence that everything around it has no choice but to acknowledge its reality. When storms come, the mountain doesn't bend. When winds howl, the mountain doesn't move. When earthquakes shake, the mountain endures. You have become the mountain. But here's where it gets uncomfortable, where the rubber meets the road of your daily life. This authority you now carry will expose everything around you. Some people will be drawn to it like moths to flame. Your grandchildren will linger in your presence longer. Strangers will open up to you without knowing why. Broken people will seek you out because they sense healing in your atmosphere. Others will resist it. They'll challenge you more openly, question your decisions, push against your boundaries. Don't be alarmed. This isn't spiritual warfare, it's spiritual confirmation. Your stability exposes their instability. Your peace highlights their chaos. Your grounded presence makes their scattered energy obvious. Both reactions prove the same thing. You're carrying something undeniable. Daniel understood this. Thrown into a den of lions because his authority threatened the status quo. But even hungry predators recognized the divine presence and lay down peacefully. Daniel 6:22 records his testimony. "My God sent his angel and shut the lions' mouths." That's not luck. That's authority so pure that even wild beasts submit to its frequency. Your own family will notice before you do. They'll say things like, "You seem different. You look younger. There's something about you I can't put my finger on." These aren't casual observations. These are confirmations of transformation. But here's the shocking truth about real authority. It never needs to prove itself. It never raises its voice to be heard. It never fights for respect, because respect flows toward it naturally, like water finding its level. Think about Jesus in the Gospels. When he spoke, Mark 1:22 tells us people were amazed because he taught them as one having authority and not as the scribes. The scribes quoted other authorities. Jesus was the authority. He didn't need credentials from man, because he carried certification from heaven. You don't need anyone's permission to be who God made you anymore. You don't need validation for the wisdom that's been tested in the fire of real life. You don't need approval for speaking truth that cuts through deception like a sword. The authority you carry isn't borrowed, it's been earned through decades of faithfulness when no one was watching. It's been forged through seasons of standing alone when everyone else sat down. It's been refined through choosing obedience over comfort, truth over popularity, character over convenience. Every betrayal you survived without becoming bitter built this authority. Every loss you endured while still praising God anchored this authority. Every time you chose faith over fear, love over hate, hope over despair, you were depositing into an account that heaven has now activated with compound interest. Authority isn't loud. Weak people are loud. Authority isn't desperate. Insecure people are desperate. Authority isn't harsh. Threatened people are harsh. True authority is the quiet confidence that comes from knowing exactly who you are, whose you are, and why you're still here when others have fallen by the wayside. You are no longer asking for a seat at the table. You are the table. You're not hoping for influence. You are the influence. You're not waiting for your voice to matter. Your very presence has become the message. 1 Timothy 4:12 reminds us, "Don't let anyone look down on you because you are young. But I'm here to tell you the reverse. Don't let anyone dismiss you because of your age. Your silver hair is a crown of glory earned through righteous living. Your lined face tells the story of God's faithfulness written in flesh. Your slower step carries the weight of wisdom that can't be rushed. Stand up right now. Don't think about it, do it. Feel your feet on the ground. Feel the authority of decades anchoring in your body. You are not a victim of time. You are a victor through eternity. Say it out loud. I carry heaven's authority. Because the world needs to see what happens when someone who has been tested by fire finally steps into the fullness of who they were always meant to be. But carrying this authority is only the beginning. The real question is, what are you going to do with the power that now flows through your very presence? But here's what nobody prepared you for about passing the test. Here's the part they don't tell you in Sunday school or write about in devotionals. After the breakthrough comes the silence. After the transformation comes the loneliness. After you've been elevated, you look around and realize half the people who used to fill your life have quietly slipped away. Your phone doesn't ring like it used to, does it? That friend who called every Sunday for 20 years. The conversations feel strained now, forced, like you're speaking different languages. That neighbor you used to chat with for hours over the fence. Now you wave politely and keep walking. That church group you belonged to for decades. Suddenly you don't fit in their conversations anymore. And it hurts, doesn't it, chosen one? It cuts deeper than you expected because these weren't toxic people. They weren't your enemies. They were your companions, your comfort zone, your familiar rhythms. But something shifted after you passed that spiritual test, and now there's distance where there used to be closeness, silence where there used to be laughter. Your first instinct is to blame yourself. What did I do wrong? Why am I suddenly so hard to be around? Did I become prideful? Did I change too much? But listen to me carefully, beloved. This isn't betrayal. This is sorting. When Gideon prepared to face the Midianites, God told him his army was too large. Judges chapter 7 records how God winnowed 32,000 men down to just 300. Not because the others were bad soldiers, but because God's victory required precision, not quantity. The many had to become the few so the glory would be undeniable. That's what's happening to your relationships right now. Heaven is applying the same divine mathematics to your circle. This isn't punishment, it's purification. This isn't loss, it's refinement. Your spiritual frequency just got tuned to a higher octave. Like a master violinist adjusting strings, your soul now vibrates at a different pitch. And here's the hard truth. Not everyone can harmonize with where you're going. The conversations that used to satisfy you now feel empty. The activities that used to fulfill you now feel meaningless. The people who used to understand you now look at you with confusion. But what breaks my heart is watching chosen ones panic in this season. They chase after fading friendships, desperate to prove they haven't changed. They shrink themselves back down, trying to fit into spaces they've outgrown. They apologize for their transformation, as if ascending closer to God's heart was somehow a mistake. Stop, right there. Stop apologizing for your elevation. Jesus himself experienced this divine sorting. Luke 9:57-62 tells us how many who said they'd follow him found reasons to turn back when the path got difficult, not because they were evil, but because they weren't ready for where he was going. Even his own family thought he'd lost his mind. Mark 3:21 records how they came to take him home, convinced he was out of his right mind. If Jesus experienced the loneliness of being misunderstood by those closest to him, why do you think your journey would be different? Here's what's really happening while you feel abandoned. Your energy is becoming a cosmic filter, automatically repelling frequencies that no longer match your purpose. People who used to drain you can't reach you the same way anymore. Conversations that used to hook you into drama now bore you. Invitations to old patterns of behavior feel foreign to your new nature. This isn't coldness developing in you. This is discernment activating. But here's the promise that will anchor your soul through this season. The universe never subtracts without multiplying. While the old circle shrinks, divine alignments are already moving toward you. Strangers who will feel like family are being positioned to cross your path. Conversations that will feed your soul for decades are being orchestrated. Connections that will multiply your impact are being prepared in the spiritual realm. 1 Kings 19 tells us that after Elijah's victory on Mount Carmel, he felt so alone he asked God to let him die. But God whispered, "I reserve 7,000 in Israel, all whose knees have not bowed to Baal." Elijah wasn't as alone as he felt. Neither are you. Right now, across this nation, other chosen ones who passed the same test are experiencing the same divine sorting. They're sitting in their own silence, wondering if transformation always comes with such loneliness. They need to know they're not the only ones walking this refined path. If you've felt the silence of old relationships fading, if you've experienced the sorting that comes after breakthrough, type in the comments, "I am not alone." Let your voice join the chorus of the elevated. Let other chosen ones know they have company in the climb. Because what's coming next isn't just new relationships, it's divine appointments that will redefine everything you thought you knew about connection, purpose, and the power of walking with people who match your frequency. The sorting was necessary, but the multiplication is about to be miraculous. Now that you understand the divine redirection, now that you see how every rejection was actually rescue, I need to tell you something that will shake you to your core, something that most believers never discover until it's too late. Passing the first test wasn't your graduation, beloved. It was your initiation. You thought surviving the storm made you safe. You thought enduring the fire meant you were finished. You thought recognizing God's hand in your pain meant you'd arrived at your destination. But here's the whisper from heaven that will change everything. The real exam is just beginning. Most chosen ones celebrate too early. They feel the breakthrough. They see the doors opening. They experience the shift in their circumstances. And they exhale with relief, thinking, "Finally, I made it." But what they don't realize is that heaven is watching what they do with their breakthrough. God is measuring not just whether you can survive the storm, but whether you can steward the calm. Think about the children of Israel. They celebrated when they crossed the Red Sea. They danced, they sang, they praised God for their deliverance from Egypt. But 40 days later, they were melting down their jewelry to build a golden calf. They passed the test of escape but failed the test of faithfulness. They could handle slavery but couldn't handle freedom. The second layer of testing isn't obvious like the first. It doesn't announce itself with dramatic trials or visible enemies. It creeps in quietly, wearing the mask of blessing, whispering lies that sound like wisdom. And here's the terrifying truth. More chosen ones fall in the second layer than ever fell in the first. Why? Because the second test doesn't look like a test at all. Listen carefully, dear one. The enemy's greatest weapon against breakthrough isn't persecution, it's comfort. Not chaos, but complacency. Not obvious sin, but subtle sabotage, disguised as spiritual growth. Let me show you the traps that are waiting for you right now. Traps so cunningly crafted that even mature believers walk straight into them without recognizing the danger. The first trap is the endless healing loop. You've discovered the power of inner work, of confronting your trauma, of processing your pain. It feels so good to finally understand why you are the way you are. But here's the danger. You can become so addicted to the process of healing that you never actually live healed. You can spend so much time in therapy, in deliverance sessions, in conferences about breakthrough that you never actually break through into your calling. Healing was meant to be a bridge, not a destination. But the enemy whispers, "You're not ready yet. You need more healing. You need to go deeper. You need to fix this one more thing before you can step into your purpose." And suddenly, 20 years pass and you're still processing the same wounds, still circling the same mountains, still preparing for a life you never actually live. The second trap is spiritual pride disguised as humility. You've learned so much about God's ways, you can spot false teaching from a mile away. You understand spiritual warfare, prophetic timing, divine alignment. But slowly, subtly, you begin to see yourself as more enlightened than other believers. You judge those who haven't had your revelations. You become critical of churches that don't operate at your level. You withdraw from community because nobody else gets it like you do. Pride was Satan's downfall, and it will be yours too if you're not careful. The moment you think you've graduated from needing correction, from submitting to authority, from learning from others, you've stepped into the very trap that destroys chosen ones. The third trap is the fear of your own blessing. This one will shock you because it sounds so spiritual, so humble. You've prayed for breakthrough for decades, but when it finally arrives, you question it. This is too good. This can't be God. I don't deserve this. So you sabotage the very thing you prayed for. You reject opportunities because they feel too big. You downplay your gifts because you're afraid of becoming proud. But false humility is still pride, it's just pride wearing a mask. When you reject what God offers because you don't think you're worthy, you're not being humble, you're calling God a liar. You're saying his assessment of you is wrong. The fourth trap is comparison and competition with other chosen ones. You start measuring your breakthrough against theirs. Why did they get promoted and I'm still waiting? Why are their prayers answered faster? Why does their ministry grow while mine stays small? Jealousy disguised as spiritual concern eats away at your faith like cancer. Here's the shocking truth that nobody talks about. The second layer of testing isn't about proving you can handle difficulty. It's about proving you can handle blessing without losing your soul. Can you receive favor without becoming entitled? Can you gain influence without becoming corrupted? Can you be blessed without forgetting the one who blessed you? Can you succeed without leaving others behind? This is why James 1:12 declares, "Blessed is the one who perseveres under trial, because, having stood the test, that person will receive the crown of life that the Lord has promised to those who love him." Notice it says, having stood the test, singular, not tests, plural, because there's really only one test that matters. Will you remain faithful to God's heart when he entrusts you with his power? The Israelites could handle Pharaoh's oppression, but they couldn't handle God's provision. They could endure slavery, but they couldn't steward freedom. They could survive Egypt, but they died in the wilderness because they failed the second test. Think of it like gold in the refiner's fire. The first heating burns away the obvious impurities, the dross, the dirt, the foreign substances that don't belong. But the master goldsmith heats the gold a second time, not to remove more impurities, but to test its permanence. Can it hold its purity under pressure? Will it maintain its value when the fire gets hot again? You've been refined once, chosen one. The obvious sins, the blatant rebellions, the surface-level struggles, they've been burned away. But now comes the second heating, not to purify you further, but to prove your permanence, to see if you'll hold your breakthrough when the pressure comes again. This is why some people experience miraculous healings only to get sick again, why some receive financial breakthroughs only to lose it all, why some step into their calling only to fall into scandal. They could handle the first fire, but they failed the second test. The real question isn't whether you can survive hardship. The real question is, can you hold what heaven has trusted you with? Can you steward the authority without abusing it? Can you carry the anointing without becoming arrogant? Can you walk in your calling without losing your character? Can you be blessed without becoming a curse to others? If you're ready to pass the second test, if you're determined to hold your breakthrough no matter what comes, I need you to make a covenant right now. Type in the comments, "I will hold my blessing." But don't just type it, say it aloud where you're sitting. Let heaven hear your voice declare that you will not be another cautionary tale, another chosen one who received much but lost it all because they couldn't handle the weight of their own breakthrough. Because what I'm about to reveal next is the secret key that separates those who keep their breakthrough from those who lose it. The one factor that determines whether your story becomes a testimony or a tragedy. Now that you understand rejection was really redirection, I need to tell you about the silence. The deafening, aching silence that's been following you like a shadow, making you wonder if you've lost your mind or lost your purpose. You know exactly what I'm talking about, don't you? That empty chair at your kitchen table where your spouse used to sit every morning for 43 years. The phone that used to ring 5 times a day but now sits silent for weeks. The friends who used to call, the invitations that used to come, the conversations that used to flow like water but now feel forced, strained, like you're speaking different languages. Maybe it's your children who've grown distant, absorbed in lives that don't seem to have space for the wisdom you've earned through decades of loving them, raising them, sacrificing for them. Maybe it's the church where you served faithfully for 30 years, but suddenly the new pastor has different ideas, younger volunteers, and your decades of dedication feel invisible, forgotten. The silence is suffocating, isn't it? It wraps around you like fog, making you question if you matter anymore, if your voice carries any weight, if anyone would even notice if you were gone tomorrow. But dear chosen one, what if I told you something that would revolutionize how you see this season? What if the silence isn't abandonment at all? What if it's the most sacred form of preparation heaven could offer you? The silence is not abandonment, it is alignment. Think about an orchestra before a symphony begins. The musicians sit in apparent chaos, each tuning their individual instruments. Violins squeaking, trumpets blaring random notes, drums thumping without rhythm. It sounds like noise, it looks like confusion. But the conductor knows something the audience doesn't. This discord is necessary. Every instrument must find its true pitch before the music can begin. Your life is being tuned right now. Every relationship that's fallen out of harmony, every connection that no longer resonates, every conversation that feels off-key, they're being adjusted. Not to punish you, but to prepare you for the symphony that's about to begin. 1 Kings 19 tells us about Elijah after his greatest victory on Mount Carmel. He expected celebration, but instead found himself alone in a cave. So depressed, he begged God to let him die. But God didn't rebuke him for the isolation. God met him in it. Because sometimes the cave is the only place quiet enough to hear heaven's whisper. And after the earthquake, a fire, but the Lord was not in the fire. And after the fire, a still small voice. The still small voice, beloved, it doesn't compete with noise. It waits for silence. Your circle shrinks before it multiplies. This isn't loss, this is divine mathematics. God removes what your courage refuses to remove. That friend who always leaves you feeling drained. That family member who only calls when they need something, that group that made you feel small instead of supported. You kept holding on because you were afraid of being alone. But God saw what you couldn't see. They were blocking the relationships He was trying to send. Every empty space in your life right now is not a void. It's a vacancy sign. Room being made for connections that will nourish your soul instead of depleting it. People who will see your worth instead of taking it for granted. Relationships that will add to your story instead of subtracting from your strength. Remember how Jesus chose His 12 disciples. He didn't gather a crowd and hope for the best. He went up to a mountain and prayed all night. Luke 6:12 says, He went out into a mountain to pray and continued all night in prayer to God. The silence, the solitude, the waiting. Then in the morning, He called them by name. The right ones, the chosen ones. Your silence is prayer time. Your solitude is selection time. Your waiting is divine preparation for the right connections that will multiply your impact, not minimize it. But here's what breaks my heart while you're sitting in this sacred silence. The enemy is whispering lies. Nobody cares about you anymore. You're forgotten. Your best days are over. You're just taking up space now. Those whispers aren't prophecy, chosen one. They're poison designed to make you quit right before your breakthrough. David understood this. Psalm 27:14 declares, Wait on the Lord, be of good courage, and He shall strengthen thine heart. Wait, I say, on the Lord. Wait doesn't mean waste time. Wait means stay alert, stay expectant, stay ready. Because something is stirring in the spiritual realm. New names are being written in your book of destiny. Divine appointments are being arranged. Supernatural connections are being prepared that will restore your joy, multiply your influence, and remind you why you've survived everything that tried to destroy you. Silence is not loss. Silence is alignment. Silence is preparation. Silence is the pause between movements in the symphony of your life. If you've felt this sacred silence wrapping around you like a cocoon, if you've wondered if God has forgotten you in this season of apparent emptiness, declare it right now in the comments. I am being prepared. Let heaven hear your faith speaking louder than your loneliness. Because what's about to emerge from this silence will leave you breathless with wonder at God's perfect timing and divine orchestration. But first, you must understand why this preparation was absolutely necessary for what heaven is about to release through you. But here's where your story takes a turn that will leave Hollywood speechless. Here's where heaven flips the script so dramatically that even the angels lean in to watch what happens next. You've been living your life like you're reading the final chapter, haven't you? Looking in the mirror at 75, 80, 85 years old, thinking the best parts are behind you. Society told you to wind down, step aside, make room for the younger generation. Your own body whispers that your time is running out. Even well-meaning family members pat your hand and say, just rest now, you've done enough. But what if I told you that everything you thought was an ending was actually an opening? What if the cosmic ink on your life story is still wet, and you, yes, you are holding the pen? Listen to me, chosen one. The God who created galaxies with a whisper doesn't work on your retirement timeline. The same God who promised Sarah a baby at 90, who called Moses to leadership at 80, who gave Anna the prophetess her greatest moment of recognition at 84, that God doesn't check birth certificates before He moves mountains. Think about Joseph for a moment. Genesis chapters 37 through 50 tell the most shocking plot twist in human history. At 17, he had dreams of greatness. At 18, he was thrown into a pit by his own brothers. At 19, he was sold into slavery. By 28, he was rotting in prison for a crime he didn't commit, forgotten by everyone who promised to remember him. For 13 years, Joseph's story looked like a tragedy. Every chapter seemed to confirm that his dreams were delusions, that God had forgotten him, that his best years were wasted in dungeons and slave quarters. If Joseph were alive today, motivational speakers would have told him to be realistic, to accept his circumstances, to make peace with his limitations. But then came Genesis chapter 41. One dream interpretation, one conversation with Pharaoh, and in a single day, 24 hours, Joseph went from prisoner to prime minister, from forgotten to famous, from the bottom of society to second in command of the most powerful nation on earth. The prison wasn't his punishment, it was his preparation. The pit wasn't his grave, it was his launching pad. Every year of suffering was building the wisdom he'd need to save not just Egypt, but the entire known world from famine. What looked like collapse was actually the opening act of his greatest chapter. Now let me ask you something that's going to pierce straight through every excuse you've made about being too old, too late, too forgotten. Are you Joseph in Genesis 40, sitting in prison, convinced your story is over? Or are you Joseph, one chapter away from Genesis 41, 24 hours from the moment that changes everything? Because here's what happens when God decides to flip your script. Time becomes irrelevant. Age becomes an asset. Experience becomes your weapon. And every year you thought was wasted becomes the very foundation of your greatest triumph. Consider Esther, a Jewish orphan girl in a foreign land, raised by her cousin, with no earthly reason to believe she'd amount to anything significant. The world would have looked at her and seen nothing but another displaced refugee, another casualty of circumstances beyond her control. But Esther chapter 4 records the moment when everything changed. Mordecai sent her a message that would echo through eternity. Who knows but that you have come to your royal position for such a time as this, not for such a time as your youth, not for such a time as your strength, not for such a time as your convenience, for such a time as this moment, this crisis, this season when your particular combination of wisdom, experience, and divine calling is exactly what the world needs. You weren't born too early or too late, chosen one. You were born precisely when heaven needed your specific brand of light to shine in this specific darkness. But here's the twist that will shatter every limitation you've accepted about your age. God's greatest moves in history happened through people past their supposed prime. Abraham was 75 when God called him to father nations. Sarah was 90 when she birthed the promise. Moses was 80 when he split the Red Sea. Caleb was 85 when he conquered his mountain. These weren't accidents. These weren't consolation prizes. These were strategic choices by a God who knows that some assignments require the kind of unshakable faith that only comes from decades of watching him be faithful when everything looked impossible. You think your wrinkles disqualify you? They're your credentials. You think your slow pace means you're behind? It means you've learned to move with divine timing instead of human urgency. You think your age means your influence is diminishing. It means your words carry the weight of proven experience. The script is being rewritten right now, and the plot twist is this. Your greatest chapter doesn't happen despite your age. It happens because of it. Ecclesiastes 3:1 declares, "To everything there is a season, and a time to every purpose under heaven." But notice, it doesn't say, except when you turn 70. It doesn't say unless you're past retirement age. It says, every purpose has its time. What if this is your time? What if every delay, every detour, every season of waiting was simply God holding back your moment until the world was desperate enough to receive what only someone with your story could give? What if the collapse you experienced wasn't your ending but your editing? What if heaven looked at the rough draft of your life and said, "This is good, but wait until you see the final version. The cosmic ink is still wet, dear one. The pen is in your hand. And the God who specializes in impossible plot twists is whispering in your ear, you thought your chapter was ending. I'm here to tell you the climax begins now." What looked like collapse was actually the opening act of your greatest chapter. If you can feel something shifting, if something ancient is stirring in your bones, if you believe heaven is rewriting your story right now, type these words, "New chapter now." Declare it, claim it, because what happens next will require you to believe that your story isn't ending, it's just getting started. But are you ready to discover what happens when someone your age finally stops apologizing for taking up space and starts occupying the territory God assigned to them before time began? Now that you understand every rejection was redirection, let me tell you what's happening inside you right now. Something has shifted, something so profound that you might not even recognize yourself anymore. You've stepped into a frequency that cannot be faked, cannot be shaken, and cannot be ignored. You are wearing the crown of invisible authority. Look at yourself, chosen one. Really look. Those lines around your eyes that the world calls aging, those are not marks of decay, those are etchings of endurance. Each wrinkle tells the story of a storm you weathered when others would have surrendered. Each silver strand in your hair is a thread of wisdom woven through decades of walking with the Almighty. Your face isn't falling apart, it's being carved into the masterpiece God always intended. But here's what will shock you to your core. People can feel your authority before you even open your mouth. You walk into a grocery store and the cashier looks up longer than usual. You sit in a doctor's waiting room and strangers find themselves telling you their deepest concerns. You attend a family gathering and everyone starts asking for your opinion on matters they used to dismiss. What changed? Your degree didn't change. Your bank account didn't change. Your address didn't change. Your frequency changed. 1 Peter 2-9 declares you are a royal priesthood, a holy nation, God's special possession, not will be. Are. Present tense, right now, at 73, at 86, at 91. The crown doesn't wait for youth, the crown waits for readiness. And you, dear one, are finally ready to wear what heaven placed on your head before you took your first breath. Remember when you used to apologize for taking up space, when you'd shrink back from conversations because you thought your voice didn't matter, when you'd second-guess every instinct, water down every truth, stay silent because conflict felt too scary? That person cannot exist in this new frequency. The test you just passed burned away the need for human approval and ignited something far more powerful, divine confidence. Think about Moses when he came down from Mount Sinai. Exodus 34-29 tells us his face was so radiant that the Israelites couldn't look at him. But here's the key detail everyone misses. Moses didn't know his face was shining. The authority wasn't something he put on like makeup or practiced like a speech. It was something that radiated from his core after spending time in God's presence. That's exactly what's happening to you right now. You've spent so many years in God's presence through pain, through prayer, through seasons when His voice was the only voice you could trust, that His glory has soaked into your very being. You carry an atmosphere now. When you enter a room, peace follows. When you speak, people lean in. When you pray, heaven moves. This isn't about age giving you wisdom. This is about surrender giving you access to the throne room of the Most High. But let me ask you something that might cut deep. How many years did you spend begging for respect? How many decades did you waste trying to prove your worth to people who were never qualified to judge it? How many times did you shrink yourself small so others would feel comfortable, dim your light so theirs could shine brighter, apologize for gifts that made others uncomfortable? The authority you carry now doesn't beg, it doesn't perform. It doesn't need validation from voices that don't matter. Listen to me, chosen one. Your authority is not something you earn, it's something you remember. You didn't suddenly become valuable when you passed this test. You remembered how valuable you've always been. The difference is that now, finally, you're no longer willing to negotiate with people who want to convince you otherwise. Daniel in the lion's den didn't need to prove his authority to the lions. The lions felt it and lay down. David didn't need to convince Goliath he was dangerous. The giant fell before he could finish his threat. Queen Esther didn't need to rehearse her royal bearing. When she put on her royal robes and entered the king's court, even the king who hadn't seen her in 30 days was moved to extend his golden scepter. Your presence now carries weight that words cannot manufacture. Your silence speaks louder than other people's shouting. Your calm confidence in chaotic moments reveals more about your character than 1,000 speeches ever could. And here's what terrifies the enemy about this kind of authority. It's unshakable. It doesn't depend on other people's opinions, market fluctuations, political outcomes, or even your own emotional state. It's anchored in something eternal, something that doesn't change with the weather or the headlines or the mood of the crowd. You are like a mountain, unmoved by storms. Psalm 125:1 promises, "Those who trust in the Lord are like Mount Zion, which cannot be shaken but endures forever." The winds of criticism may howl around you, but you don't bend. The earthquakes of circumstance may shake the ground beneath others, but your foundation is in the bedrock of heaven's approval. But here's the paradox that will blow your mind. The less you need to announce your authority, the more powerfully it announces itself. You don't have to tell people you've changed. They feel it the moment you walk in. You don't have to demand respect. It flows to you naturally. You don't have to prove your worth. It's written in your posture, your pace, your peace. Your scars are no longer marks of shame. They're signatures of survival. Every line on your face tells the story of a battle won. Every grey hair is a trophy earned through spiritual warfare. Every slow step carries the weight of someone who has walked through fire and emerged not just intact, but transformed. The world sees your age and expects you to fade into the background, but heaven sees your experience and expects you to step into the foreground. This is your season of invisible authority, the kind that doesn't need microphones or stages, because it transforms atmospheres through presence alone. You don't have to announce your authority, beloved. The world announces it for you. In the way conversations shift when you enter, in the way problems seem smaller when you're around, in the way people find themselves asking, "What is it about you that feels different?" Right now, wherever you are, I want you to feel the weight of the crown you've been wearing all along. Say it with me, out loud, with the voice of someone who finally remembers who they are. I carry heaven's crown. Say it until your spirit believes it. Say it until the enemy trembles. Say it until heaven smiles. But wearing the crown of invisible authority comes with a responsibility that will either make you or break you. Are you ready to discover what happens when heaven finally trusts you with the keys to supernatural influence? Beloved chosen one, as we reach the end of this sacred journey together, I need you to carry 3 eternal truths with you, like treasures in your heart. First, remember this. You didn't just survive the test, you conquered it. Every rejection was redirection. Every closed door was divine protection. Every tear you shed was liquid prophecy, preparing you for this moment when heaven would finally say, "Now you're ready for everything I've prepared." Second, the crown of invisible authority you now wear isn't temporary. It's not something that fades with time or weakens with age. This authority deepens with every sunrise, strengthens with every prayer, and becomes more unshakable with every step you take in faith. Your wrinkles are crowns of wisdom. Your scars are signatures of survival. Your years are not counting down, they're counting up to your greatest impact. Third, the invisible authority flowing through you right now isn't just for your benefit. It's for every broken heart that needs to witness resilience, every lost soul that needs to see what faithfulness looks like, every younger generation that desperately needs to understand that God doesn't discard his vessels when the world thinks they're past their prime. He promotes them. But hear me clearly, dear one, you are not walking this path alone. Even in your moments of deepest doubt, even when the enemy whispers that you're forgotten, even when circumstances try to convince you that your best days are behind you, the Creator of the universe is still working, still moving, still orchestrating divine appointments in your life. He who began a good work in you will be faithful to complete it, and he's not finished with you yet. And beyond God's faithful presence, you have something beautiful right here, right now, a community. Look at these comments flowing in. Feel these hearts connecting across distances. You've found your tribe, chosen one. We are here. We see you. We understand the weight you carry because we carry it too. When you stumble, we'll lift you up. When you doubt, we'll remind you of your calling. When you celebrate, we'll rejoice with you. So let me ask you this final question, and let it settle deep in your spirit. Now that you know you've passed the test, now that you understand every struggle was preparation, now that you're wearing the crown of heaven's authority, what will you do with this revelation? Will you shrink back into the shadows, or will you finally step into the light that has been calling your name since before time began? Before I release you into your destiny, join me in this prayer. Wherever you are, in your living room, your bedroom, sitting in your car, place your hand on your heart and let me speak over your life. Almighty God, creator of heaven and earth, the Ancient of Days who sees the end from the beginning, I come before you now carrying every precious soul who has stayed with us through this entire message. Father, you see their hearts, you know their struggles. You've counted every tear, collected every prayer, recorded every moment of faithfulness when no one else was watching. Lord, I place my hand on their shoulder right now through these words, and I speak life over their weary bones. Where they feel forgotten, remind them they are engraved on your palms. Where they feel worthless, let them remember they are worth the blood of your Son. Where they feel finished, whisper that you're just getting started. Breathe fresh wind into their lungs, God. Let them wake up tomorrow not as survivors, but as conquerors, not as people counting down their days, but as kingdom warriors stepping into their greatest assignment. Give them supernatural strength for their bodies, divine wisdom for their decisions, and unshakable peace for their hearts. Open doors that no man can shut, Lord. Bring divine connections that will accelerate their purpose. Let resources flow from unexpected places. Let favor follow them wherever they go. Let their presence carry such weight of glory that atmospheres shift when they enter rooms. And Father, use their stories, every scar, every victory, every moment they chose faith over fear. Use it all to set others free. Let their testimonies become lifelines for drowning souls. Let their survival become someone else's strength. Bless their families, Lord. Heal their relationships. Restore what was lost. Multiply what remains. Let their children and grandchildren rise up and call them blessed. Let their legacy echo through generations they'll never meet, but will impact through their faithfulness today. In the mighty name of Jesus, who wore a crown of thorns so they could wear crowns of glory, I seal this prayer with faith, hope, and love. Let your will be done in their lives, and let them never forget they are chosen, they are loved, and they are never, ever alone. Amen. Now, beloved, I want to hear from you. Don't just watch this message, let it live through you. Share in the comments below what God spoke to your heart today. Tell us about the test you passed, the door He closed that you now see was protection, the crown of authority you're finally ready to wear. Your testimony might be exactly what someone else needs to hear to keep going. And please, if this message touched your soul, don't keep it to yourself. Share it with someone who feels forgotten, overlooked, or past their prime. There's a chosen one in your life right now who needs to remember they're still called, still anointed, still carrying heaven's purpose in their hearts. If this is your first time here, welcome to the family. Hit that subscribe button and join thousands of believers who gather here regularly to be reminded that their best chapters aren't behind them, they're ahead of them. We're building something beautiful together, a community where faith is strengthened, hope is restored, and destinies are fulfilled. Thank you for staying with me through this entire journey. Thank you for opening your heart, for allowing these words to penetrate the sacred chambers of your soul. Thank you for being brave enough to believe that maybe, just maybe, you're more powerful, more loved, and more needed than you ever dared to imagine. The test is over, chosen one. You passed. Now, go forward and wear your invisible crown with the confidence of someone who knows they belong to the King of Kings. Until we meet again, walk in authority, rest in His love, and never forget you are chosen, you are crowned, and your story is far from over. God bless you mightily.